Is this the real life, or is this just a fictional reality? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fictional Reality, episode number 3 in season 2. This week, I got to talk to the creators behind Society of Curiosities and the owner of Kauai escape rooms in the island of Hawaii. They were super lovely. Michelle and Yacine, we have a lot of shared interests in terms of creating experiences that are guided by narrative and creating a world that immerses the puzzle players and the explorers and the audience in a world that's believable. This is something that has been really important to me, is creating puzzle experiences where you sit there and go, I understand in the world of the narrative why this puzzle has been created. So we have a lovely discussion about their journey as escape room owners, enthusiasts, and then the creators of the Society of Curiosity, which is a mystery mail-out subscription service. I hope you enjoy. Without much further ado, here is Michelle and Yacine. Michelle and Yacine, thank you very much for coming onto Fictional Reality, a show where we talk about experienced designers, puzzle makers, and escape room enthusiasts, and try and sort of get to the bottom of what is an experience. Welcome. Come on, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having us. I'm Yacine.
Michelle.
We're the owners of Kauai Escape Room and Society of Curiosities.
The journey.
The journey.
Where did it all begin?
It all began in Montreal. That's where we played our first escape game.
Ooh,
And,
which one was it?
It was a maze escape in Montreal.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, I am not a gamer. Like, Monopoly is too much for me. I'll take a game that's a party game. Like that's as far as I went in gaming. And he's a big like D&D-er and stuff. So his friend was like, "You should play an escape game. You're really gonna like it." And I was very skeptical because it's just not me. Like the gaming thing.
Right.
And then sure enough,
how long ago was this experience?
that was 2015.
Oh, so when they were brand new and
Yeah.
in the States there.
Yeah, it was very early on. And then sure enough, we play one, and Michelle was like, as soon as we're done, when's the next one? Can we play another one?
And that's it. Like, it's kind of like what you talk about in your podcast. It's about immersion. It's about creating other worlds. And that's what hooked me. It wasn't that it was a game. It was that like for an hour, I was somewhere else. I was someone else and somewhere else.
Right. It's fascinating to note that escape rooms, when I was growing up, I always had this dream because you see these great movies in like the Goonies or something. You think, I just wish I could be on that movie set, as well as I wish I could just be in that room itself. And escape rooms really scratch that itch, don't they?
They do.
Yeah, so for us, so much so that we wanted to share that experience with our friends, and we started building games for fun. We have an Airstream trailer, so we built Witch's Den for Halloween that year. And then Valentine's Day. Serial killer for Valentine's Day, on topic. And then Michelle, all our friends loved it. We had maybe 60 friends like come through for each game that we set up at home, and
like friends of friends, because we really don't have 60 friends on island.
True. That is
okay, so word started to get around, and were people like coming to you of like, hey, I've heard there's like this experience,
like this underground escape room, basically.
Yeah.
Yo, kid, you wanna play a puzzle?
Yeah, it's a little sketchy. Yeah. Come into my house.
yeah. I'll lock the door and then you have to try and find a way out.
You need to cut this part. No, I'm just joking.
What's the worst that could happen?
So it was catching on and people were getting excited and then...
And we had fun bringing it to people because, we live on an island. We live in such an isolated spot that no one had heard of an escape game.
Right.
So it was pretty cool that we were the one to introduce it to them.
Yeah, we started talking about opening a brick and mortar business. Michelle thought there was a market for it. I thought there was not going to be any market for it. So to prove her wrong, I'm doing air quotes here for people listening. I set up a fake website with fake games and a fake booking system to show that no one was going to ask for this. And sure enough, with no advertising, no marketing, within a week, there were people trying to book our fake games. So
that's the best story. Yeah. Although it sounds like was there a kernel of curiosity for you, Yacine, of just like, maybe this will actually get some interest?
Yeah, once I saw there was interest, I was really excited about it.
Yeah, right. And because you came from, you've been running a successful D&D blog, is that right?
Yeah, from 2007 to 2010, I was running a D&D blog. By the end, it had over 10,000 daily readers.
Wow.
So,
I've seen from the website, you sort of like, you've gotten into the story. You're a bit of maybe let's say expert storyteller in some ways. Like, you know how to craft a story to engage players, as a lot of game mastering is sort of about doing that, like sending players on a story that they themselves can play. And you see, you come from a background of film and psychology. So,
Michelle, yeah.
Yes. You guys seem like a shoo-in for the perfect two people to create an immersive, puzzle-driven narrative experience. I would love to find out a little bit from each of you about how you're seeing your storytelling sort of experience, your D&D campaign experience fed into how you design your experiences. And Michelle, if you could tell us a little bit about how psychology has helped inform you of your process, I would love to know that stuff.
Sure thing.
Well, from the tabletop role-playing background, I think what I brought was mostly the fact that the stars are the players. You're telling a story together, but ultimately they are the hero. They are the center of the story. They have to feel good about themselves. But it also has to be challenging. If everything's a gimme, it's no fun. So that's really what escape rooms are about. There's no other hobby that combines like a challenge, like an escape room, really, in the popular hobbies.
Sorry,
and then
Cat is
Cat's
got some opinions on the matter.
The Cat's decided he's going to be part of this.
And then crafting stories that have puzzles and challenges within, but that still fit the narrative, is also something you do a lot of in role-playing games. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, and then so my degree is psychology and education, and I was a teacher for 10 years. So like those kind of go hand in hand. You know, you're always kind of like what Yacine said, that you want to put the person first. Just like when I was teaching, it's about the students, but everyone has their own needs and you have to meet them. So when we design games, we really think about multiple intelligences and like, how will everyone approach a puzzle? That there's no one way people will look at a puzzle. You probably know this as you design your game.
Yeah.
It's insane that you think you have this most perfect puzzle and then you're like, oh man, like I have to change it so much.
Yeah, I had an experience once where I had this thing called a date night treasure hunt, and you had to start in a place we have in Brisbane called Fortitude Valley. And for whatever reason, the players who had this particular, so this was like an envelope you buy from me, and then they would open that at the place, and it was just like this pre-made adventure for them to go on. And anyway, somehow they missed the memo. I don't know how they exactly did it, because there was a map there that says Fortitude Valley, but I saw them. I was selling these at the markets, and I saw them a few weeks later. I was like, oh, hey, how did you go? Did you enjoy the date night? They were like, yeah, we had a great time. We were a bit confused about a few things, but you know, we did it and we had a really good time. And a few things they said didn't add up. And I realized they were in a place called the Botanic Gardens, which was nowhere near Fortitude Valley. And this experience led them to 6 specific locations, 2 bars and a few different shops to do all this stuff. They had somehow found equivalents of all the clues. They'd interpreted the clues in certain ways and went, oh, this must be this over here. And they said, we had a great time. We loved it. We thought it was awesome. And I was like, you didn't even play it. Like, you just essentially made your own adventure based on these like rough riddles. So it was just phenomenal to me, the amount of interpretation that people can have to a puzzle or a clue.
And that's just amazing. It's just like that concept that people want stories. People want to make up stories in their head. So it's like that experiment where you give them disjointed pictures and they will stitch a story together. It's like the most natural thing we do. So your people wanted that story, they wanted that puzzle, and there you go. Like, they designed a new game for you. Yeah,
right. And from this experience, this is where I realized, like, the joy people get is not, you know, you might have 2 items and people will be given, just like you said, you know, you'll be given this and then this. The joy people have is when they connect those 2 items, and it's actually like their own creation is part of the thing that they enjoy when they experience something like that, especially something that's a bit abstract or esoteric.
Yes.
So with that in mind, I want to move on. I want to ask about Society of Curiosities and your mail-out adventure, but I would also like to know, how do you go about designing an experience? What's your process from idea to creation?
Yeah, so we start obviously with a theme. So we have like kind of a general story and theme in mind. And then we go to like we call them cinematic moments.
Great.
So kind of like in a movie, those big, amazing things that happen to the character, those are the moments that we put into place and design puzzles around to start.
Yeah, we want to think of what is going to be memorable, what is going to be surprising, shocking, what is going to make an impression, and craft everything backwards from there.
Yeah.
We do a lot of research on the theme first before deciding what those moments could be or should be. Because not all themes are created equal. Sometimes it's a great theme, but you can't build it, or it's too big and you can't like fit it nicely in a story. You need to narrow it down or choose something else. So a lot of research goes into the theme and then the moments, and then we craft a bunch of puzzles that fit the theme, and then we pick and choose those that can make a coherent whole.
Well, something that seems to shine through on your website is your importance on making it believable that the puzzles are there, like that the puzzles serve the narrative, and that you're involved in something. Because, and I see this in Australia here, escape rooms are relatively new. We're about 4 years behind the States and Canada, and even more than in Europe. And you'll do an escape room that's perfectly fine, but it's just like, who made these puzzles? Like, we had there's a jailbreak escape room, and it's very fun. Puzzles are very clever, but you sort of go that there can be no puzzle maker in this situation, because I'm now going onto the security camera desk and there's a puzzle embedded into like the buttons on the security camera. And it's like, I thought I was breaking out a jet. Like, it just, you lose narrative cohesion there. So do you feel, how do you, I guess that is a constraint for you guys, but in the end pays off because people can play the story as much as the puzzles?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time saying, like, does this make sense? Does this fit in the story? So between like Society of Curiosities and our physical escape room, it's the same thing. You probably do this too, maybe, is like, we make a whole story, we have all the backstories, so everything that we do has to make sense to us. Like the player, and the player might not even know the whole backstory, but as long as we know it and it makes sense to us, it's a go.
Right.
So like, it just has to be there, or else it's just kind of random elements all thrown together, like, oh, you have this, and how did it get there? Like, you just kind of need to know these things to make the story feel good.
Yes,
and it might
we have a lot of
you go.
We have a lot of fun ideas and clever puzzles that do not pass the "but why" test, which is really frustrating when you're in the flow and you think you have something good and you just can't really find a good excuse for it to be in the game.
Do you ever get lost on those trails? I know I do when I'm coming up with something and it's like, oh, and a treasure map will be so cool here if they find a treasure map. And then if they go over here and they pull this out, they can put that on top of the treasure map. And then that is actually going to link up to the, and all of a sudden you start going, oh, wait, no, I really want to do this, but it's just, I'm too far down this weird trail that's not going to make any sense to anyone. Do you get caught in that?
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. And, with Society of Curiosities, it's really interesting because we have like an infinite world, but also a very finite world because we mail out tangible items and we want people to like use those tangible items in the game. And so they can go to websites and we can really expand their world, but they don't have that tangible aspect. So there's a limit to what we can give them or what they can really do without feeling like a video game, because escape games, you don't want them to go full circle. Like, started off as video games and people started to do these online escape games and then it became real. And like, we're kind of in the danger now with all these new games and avatars and stuff of kind of like going right back to where we started. But video games do it better. Like
every time. And I remember playing, what was it? I think it was my housemate was playing Zelda earlier this year. And I just had this like bit of a sinking feeling as I was watching it, because I was like, video games hold this special place in the explorer puzzle person game's heart, where they can explore in the depths of a volcano and do all these intricate puzzles. And so there is this line of like, you want to make it like a video game, and that video games walk players through and increase difficulty as you go along. But you also want to have that tangibility that makes them really separate, where the player is literally playing with the ephemera.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, like there's only so far you can take them down those series with the items you have. Like an escape room, a physical escape room, you can actually create items. And like whatever you said about finding a key and placing it here and doing this, like that can be done in an escape room. But when you have like a paper thing that you're selling or something we're sending out, there are limits on what you can send.
Yeah. But then the upside of that is because there's no game master around, it's not a constrained physical space. We can blend the real world with the fictional one. And it's one of the things that people have been telling us about Society of Curiosities. I was like, I wasn't sure if this was real or not.
I saw that review on your website there. Yeah. And this has been an angle that I really want to go down have been over the past few years, is how to create this narrative that then, this is what fictional reality is that you can't see that line between the fiction and the reality. And when people go from going, oh yeah, this is a game, there's that moment of like, and I want to instill this experience in people, that 1 second of like, oh, wait a minute. Hang on, something larger is happening here. Something real is happening, and I'm not quite sure where it sits in the thing. And that, I know I'm sort of a bit of a sadist for that destabilization in people. Just be like, question reality. Like it can really be played with.
This week we had one player that kept chatting with the characters in the game for a whole 24 hours after the game was over.
Oh, really? This is one of your Society of Curiosity games?
Yes. So we have characters in the game that you can respond to. So he's a programmer. So he's built these characters and responses, and as people interact with them, we continue to add responses. So they actually have a bigger and bigger knowledge of responses. So like one character is like this kind of professor type who helps with some things, and we've even built in like his favorite movies and like different responses. Should someone ask, there they are.
Wow. Now tell us a little bit about the Society of Curiosities in a bit more detail. What is it, and how did you come to be making this?
Great. So the Society of Curiosities is a series of adventures by mail, so mystery in a box type games. When you subscribe, you get a package in the mail every 3 months from the society that asks you to investigate a case. So you start with tangible items. We take great care in making them seem period appropriate. So if it's old papers that were discovered, they're aged. If you get modern magazine papers, we actually get entire magazines printed and then rip out the pages we need for the game. So, and then what seems like a simple investigation inevitably grows bigger as you start doing research online. You may have to text your team on the ground and fellow researchers that can help you look online. You may have to Google things, so very open-ended. And eventually you will find a curiosity, an item that was sought after by the society, and that will inevitably lead to more adventures.
Cool. So you've got this sort of like the meta story of every 3 months you get a new like curiosity to be discovered. And each of these stand as somewhat standalone adventures.
Yeah, one of like before entering into this market, we did a lot of play with other games, and I just couldn't get into the ones that came every month, like as an installment, because I felt it was so hard to like finish a element of a story and then wait a month and be like, oh wait, where was I? And like it's that kind of upstart that was really challenging. So some people love it, but for us, we really wanted just kind of, like you said, just it can be played by itself, but within a year of 4 mailings, there's an overarching story that is told throughout the mailings.
Which I think is really important in, we got to adapt to the world we live in now. Like when I was growing up, you had to wait a week for the new TV show. I had to wait another week to find out what was in that hatch and Lost. But we don't live in that world anymore, and people do. I found a similar thing, looking at this, detective mystery that is this element in a series, and I found myself disincentivized to get it because I thought, I don't want to get one and then have to wait. So I think that's really smart in creating a standalone story, but that hints at a larger perspective.
And like all those TV shows of the past did it. I mean, like all the detective stories that we've watched on TV, they're standalone, but then there's like that drama that carries over or something else. And it's kind of like that wheel has already been created. We don't have to we just get to kind of follow that model.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of the answers are there waiting for us to pick them up in these other mediums and formats, which I was talking during another interview about the interesting thing about escape rooms and these puzzle adventures, that they've come into the world after TV shows and after video games, yet they use technology that was invented long before, and some don't even use any technology at all. It's a fascinating phenomenon that these seem to be a response to the digital online world. And yet like they weren't invented after books were invented. People weren't doing escape rooms after Treasure Island was invented. I don't really have a question attached to that, just a curiosity.
No, I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? That we want to go get locked in a room for an hour, put away our cell phones, sometimes lock up our cell phones and just ourselves.
Look, that's one of my biggest sales angles is when I'm, sell my stuff at the markets and people are very interested in the concept. When I start going down the angle of like, look, put away your phone for a while. This will help you. You don't need your phone or anything. People sort of go, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. In my head, I'm thinking, you could just turn your phone off. But hey, look, if you want to pay me to justify putting your phone away, I will happily take your money.
Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
So we share something in common that we work with paper, and I don't have a mail out mystery, but something that really intrigues me is the creative constraints, and you touched on it before, of creating a tangible product that you mail out, and there are limits there. What is your sort of industrial or scaling design process? How have you come, and do you make everything in-house yourself, print it out yourself and send it all out? What was your process like for that?
So the process is kind of boring. I mean, just look at the numbers and we know what price point we can go up to for the cost of our goods. That's the boring part.
Well, when you say that, is that price point what your customers are willing to pay, or?
Well, we actually just told them what they were going to pay.
So it's both, right? So when we started designing this and we figured out what we wanted to do, we realized pretty quickly that we were not going to be able to hit the price point of most games out there, which sometimes as low as $10 per month.
Yeah.
So we're in the $39 per 3 months range. So it's still, we wanted to stay under 50 because that's a price point that will make people balk, $50 at a time. But so that was kind of our range. And then, so that gives us a certain amount that we can spend on the game itself.
Yeah, and then, so it's a blend of printing in-house and also outsourcing. So we outsource all of our magazines. So they're actually real magazines, like you said. There's also tangible items in the game that we had to outsource. So, oh yeah, there you go. So you probably can't see it very well, but we have this coin that he's holding up, and it's a pirate coin.
Cool.
So this was a fun one because we did a draft ourselves, and then we hired a designer to design, like, to make it look good. And then we actually outsourced to China, and they had to 3D render it and make a mold and cast it. And all the while we're crossing our fingers and being like, I've never outsourced to China before. I hope we get something.
Yeah, right.
So that was interesting. So I think we'll continue doing that. As we scale larger, there will be certain things that can't be done in-house. We did learn that printing is very costly when you're just using your printer. It says 2,000 runs, but they don't mean that when you're doing full color images.
yeah 2,000 runs of like a 300-word paragraph in black and white. Yeah,
exactly. Like those numbers, those calculations were way off. So that was an interesting learning point for us.
Yeah, but part of our process requires a certain amount of things we do in-house because we keep tweaking the games and the puzzles after they are released. As we get feedback from players, and we can also see which hints are the most requested, and how people reply to some puzzles because they chat with the characters in the game. So we've made, the last month 5 or 6 small adjustments. And then once the game stops changing, then we plan on outsourcing a lot of the stuff we're still doing in-house at the moment.
Yeah, so if we had outsourced just a huge run of like several thousand of one item, we wouldn't be able to make those small tweaks that kind of are just going to make the game even better.
Yeah, and they can take a good or great experience up into like a really memorable one and sort of get that customer to come back to really trust you, actually.
Yes, and that's something we were worried about as we started, because like when you own an escape room, when you create the designs for an escape room, you get to see thousands of people playing it. Even with employees, you can get their feedback, or you can just pop in from now and again just to see the games. But we were worried about this, that once you send it out, people have it and they may say something, they might not say something. So I'm really happy that he figured out how to monitor the hint access and keep logs of all of the text just to kind of see how people are playing the game.
Yeah, very smart to get that sort of like passive feedback from the players there, where you're not asking for their feedback, which gives them, you have to pass out when you ask someone for feedback. You sort of have to put it through a filter and understand what they're saying. But when it's this like hint system, it's a bit more of a genuine, they're not trying to impress you. They're not trying to critique you. It's just their interaction with the game itself.
Yes, and it hasn't happened in this case, but it's happened a lot in our physical escape rooms in the past, where you have accidental red herrings in there. If people follow a logical path and it leads them to the wrong answer, the game has to change. There's no option, or that has to become the right answer, or acceptable. But this is definitely something that we want to avoid.
Yeah, and I've found that like my journey and sort of what's humbled me with watching people play my experiences is you do want to sort of go, well, it's just this player, but as time has gone on, even if one person has a certain reaction, it's like that reaction, even if it's the most illogical jump they could make, is a super legitimate reaction. And if you want to run at scale, then one person is usually indicative of like 1,000 people in the world at very least, that are all going to do the same thing. So you really have to take on that thing. And if something is a great puzzle and works really well and has all these intricate parts, but people are jumping to these random conclusions, you've got to take them on board and go, okay, there's something wrong with the design here.
Oh, and it's so humbling. It's such a humbling aspect to be like, oh, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
But it is. It's us. And like, as you said, you have to take your game from good to great to hopefully amazing. And those are the steps. You have to sacrifice your ego and your beautiful puzzles when you get that feedback.
There was one puzzle we just loved in an escape room where you had to reach into a compartment that you could not see into, but you could reach inside with both hands and see that there were carvings inside, and take some paper and some charcoal and make a rubbing to see what was written in it.
Cool.
We loved it. We play tested it. Our first playtest group got it and did it, and that was the only group ever. So before playtest ended, it was like, you know what, this is too hard. So
just no one will get it. Yeah, and you have to say goodbye to it.
Yep.
Still have fond memories of feeling clever about that.
Hey, I've done the same thing. I one time. Oh, oops! I'm going all over the place. But I love the chatterbox. You know, these old things. And I created an experience once where, you know, there was a coded sequence, and the coded sequence would like teach you how to sort of do this. And then it would land on a certain point, and then there'd be a hole in the paper, and there was just too many steps. If you got it, it was cool. It was like, oh, wow. When I play tested it and I did it on a hot day, oh man, I'll never forget seeing my friends like an hour after I thought they would arrive at the final destination. I'm waiting for them. I'm messaging them, and they're just like, we don't get it. And I'm tell them how to do it, and they still don't get it. I see them walking down the street, and they're just like sweating. And it was just like, yeah, okay, I'm really sorry. My own cleverness got the better of me, and I actually gave you an unpleasant experience as a result of it. And I remember from then on, it was like one step is enough. You know, I don't need to go down 4 different steps, because no one thinks like I do. People are just.
You know what's amazing is friends keep letting us play test on them. Because honestly, like, I think we make brilliant puzzles, but we really don't. We're just good at refining our puzzles.
Right.
You know, and like that poor first friend, like you kind of have to go through your list and be like, okay, who's play tested the first time? Because you have to kind of be like, okay, they're going to be the last one to test, because it's just such an awful experience. Like there's no perfect game in the beginning.
Yeah. Every time I make a puzzle, no matter how like small it is, I'll be lucky if the puzzle works and it's just difficult. But most times I've made a spelling error, or I've done the puzzle's broken basically when I give it to them. And my old housemates, they were great sports, and just every time would jump in, and I would come back half an hour later, be like, how you going? They're like, look, I'm just really confused about this here, and I think I've got this. And I'm like, oh yeah, that you got the right answer. I set the padlock wrong. Sorry. And every time I'll come back, and I'm like, always, Toby was his name. I'm like, Toby, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for playing my puzzles. And one time I will give you one that works from the get-go. But at the moment you're testing, so there's the Pavlovian response here is that I'm just going to hurt you every time.
And they keep saying yes. I don't get it. I would run if it was me coming to them with like the very first round of a puzzle. I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm really busy. Yeah.
I'm grateful. I have a
there's
friend.
no way of getting out the gate. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. And that's the thing. You, as the designer as well, your mind is in a different place. It's in, well, for me anyway. This might be similar for you. It's with the flow of the experience, and as you sort of said earlier, the puzzles come as like an augment to the narrative of the experience. And so it's likely for me that the puzzles are going to have some flaws in them because I'm like, oh yeah, it's just solve the word search and you'll get the answer. But I want to see what it's like when you figure out that this links to this, and that's what I'm looking for. And they say, well, the word search is broken. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they're like, well, now my experience is ruined. And you're like, you didn't play test correctly. I wasn't looking for that. But thanks for you found the little problem there. So what are some tips and tricks for people who would like to design their own puzzles, especially during quarantine where people are looking for things to do indoors? Do you have any tips and tricks for just the average player, someone who's just getting into this exciting industry, for how would they go about making an experience for people?
I'm sure you have something to start.
Yes. One thing that's fairly easy to do is to give people free wins, gimmies, like super simple puzzles, but especially at the beginning of the game to give them confidence in themselves, in you, and just get them going, and then have the meatier puzzles maybe in the middle. And you also want to end quick. You don't want to end them being just like exhausted from one giant puzzle at the end. So once they go over that giant puzzle or the most difficult one, give them 1 or 2 quick wins to finish, so they're going to feel great about themselves.
Right.
All right. Well, so I listened, or I watched your video on YouTube about like the buttons hiding little pieces throughout the house.
Yeah.
I love that. So I kind of want to piggyback off of that. And one thing that I love to do is just like really novel things. So when we design our games, we try to think of something that's really going to surprise people, even if they're a seasoned puzzler, something that surprises. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel because you have a great format. I would tell people to follow your format. So link to the video now, follow your format because it's wonderful because it's so simple. But some fun things are like you can freeze something in an ice cube. You wouldn't do that in a shorter term game because you don't have the time, but like when you're in a home, you can do that. Also like putting something in a balloon and making them pop it is a fun experience.
Great. So like these really tactile, physical experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. What else? Like I also like things like magic ink or black lights. Those things are very inexpensive. You can buy and get mailed to you. So I love to just integrate the novel into a hunt. So just find one thing and put it kind of in the middle to the end of your game. So it's like this really fun reveal.
Yeah, right. And you can have those as your like cinematic moments, even on this small domestic scale, and have those free wins leading to those, a simple puzzle that leads to the ice cube that then leads to another sort of simple free win puzzle that leads to. You've reminded me of something I remember seeing. I think it was in a magic book that I got when I was 6 years old or something. And it was to take lemon juice with a toothpick and use that on a piece of paper. And for anyone listening at home, this is a DIY recipe for invisible ink. Use the lemon juice on a piece of paper. And then if you hold that over a toaster, it will brown the lemon juice and reveal the ink. So it's a really simple heat. What would you call it? A invisible ink that's activated by heat.
Yeah, I think baking soda does something similar too.
Yeah, we did one of our puzzles in our at home escape room was baking soda and vinegar that you made a potion with, and then it overflowed onto a plate that had coffee filters with something written underneath. So the coffee filter becomes invisible when it gets soaked with vinegar and baking soda, and you make magic. You make something appear.
Wow, that is very cool.
You can also, if you have a ceiling fan or any type of fan, you can just tape something on the fan, like a message, and it's invisible when the fan turns, and you stop it and you obviously see the message right away. So that's a neat trick you can do at home.
Or you can do the reverse and have something on the fan, but they don't see it, and they turn the fan on and it comes flying down from the ceiling.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that would be quite fun, especially if the clue doesn't lead you to the fan, but leads you to the switch.
Yeah, and then something just comes and surprises you.
Oh, well.
I love like those little moments of whimsy in a game.
Yeah, and they don't take like, this advanced technology. They don't take a degree in sort of in anything. just a little bit of creativity using stuff that we were taught, the fun little games we were taught, science experiments we were taught as kids. They still work as an adult. Isn't that funny?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that just about wraps it up there. Is there anything else you would like to share with us? Any other tips or tricks? Or please use this moment now also to plug your wares. Tell us where we can get your stuff and where we can find you.
You're better at that.
All right. Well, when you do come to Hawaii, make sure you stop on the island of Kauai and visit Kauai Escape Room once it's safe.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Not yet.
And then Society of Curiosities, societyofcuriosities.com. It's a subscription adventure by mail. You can cancel at any time. So if you just want to try one, that's fine. We do hope and expect that you'll stay with us for a few more. That's what we do.
Yeah. Those links will be available if you're on Spotify right now. They're just in the show notes there, and YouTube just in the video below. Do you guys ship to Australia?
Not yet, but we started looking at shipping prices worldwide. So
cool.
It's in the works. No date announced yet.
Yeah, actually, the biggest thing over shipping is we have a text element. So we have to work around, we have to get like Australian numbers or different numbers in different countries. So we're not charging you to play our game. So we're
I see.
on that.
Interesting. Okay, well that's good to know. And I'll tell you, as someone in Australia who's just been definitely during the quarantine researching a lot more into this mail out mystery sector, can't find really anyone in Australia who's doing it. I may not be looking hard enough, but I also think that speaks to, if there is someone doing it, they don't know how to market their stuff, because I've actively looked and haven't found anything. So escape rooms are starting to take off in Australia, where, like I said, a few years behind. When I worked at one, most people who didn't know about escape rooms. Most of our customers were first timers who just went, "What the hell is this?" So it's exciting to see other countries ahead knowing how to do it and being in a place where it's sort of newish. So there's a market for it in Australia if you figure out the international. Yeah, I can't wait to sign up. Let me know as soon as you can.
Good to know. We will do that.
Yes, and by the time this posts on Spotify, we'll have a free mystery too.
Yeah.
That's either play online or print and play at home. So
excellent.
You'll get to see what we do even before we do shipping.
Oh, that's super cool. And we'll just find that on your Instagram. Would be a good way to find out about that free mystery.
Yeah, Instagram, our website, or our Facebook page. They're all at Society of Curiosities.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on board. It was awesome chatting with you.
Thank you for having us.
Great chatting with you.
And that wraps us up for episode 3 in season 2 of Fictional Reality. I hope you enjoyed listening. You can, of course, follow and catch Yacine and Michelle at Society of Curiosities. The links are down below. Remember to subscribe and like if you enjoyed this episode. Check us out on all of our social medias. We're all a lovely community, and we want to sort of teach you and pave the way for how you too can create these sort of immersive experiences. I've been James from The Puzzle Maker. Catch you next time.